Today we're digging into a really strange and powerful story. It's about a withered vine, a furious prophet, and a pretty tough lesson about what really matters more: God's mercy or, our own comfort. So, let's just start with a question that feels, well, almost impossible, right? Can you actually be angry at grace? I mean, can you get furious when someone gets a second chance they absolutely didn't earn? The story of the prophet Jonah suggests the answer is a shocking and maybe uncomfortably human yes.
All right, picture this. You're sent on this huge mission, and against all odds, it's a massive success. A whole city, a place known for being wicked, actually listens to you and completely turns things around. You've just saved them from total disaster. So how do you react? With pure, raw anger. And that bizarre, fascinating moment is where our story kicks off.
So, what in the world is going on here? How can a prophet possibly be mad about his own success? Well, to really understand the deep lesson of this withered vine, we first have to unpack the prophet's very, very strange anger.
The text is super clear about this. Jonah is deeply, exceedingly displeased. But why? Well, because God saw the city of Nineveh repent, and so he decided not to bring the disaster he'd promised. See, Jonah wanted justice. He wanted to see destruction fall on his nation's enemies. For him, they were the bad guys, the ones who totally deserved whatever was coming to them. What he got instead was mercy, and he just couldn't handle it.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. How does God respond to this? He doesn't lecture Jonah. He doesn't get into a big theological argument. Instead, he gives him a gift, a simple living thing, a vine.
So you've got Jonah sulking outside the city, just stewing in the hot sun. And God provides this small, totally practical moment of mercy. A plant literally grows up overnight, giving him shade and saving him from his own physical misery. It's this little moment of pure, unearned comfort.
And get this, look at his reaction. The exact same word, exceedingly, that was used to describe his anger is now used to describe his joy. He is exceedingly glad about this little plant. He's over the moon about his own personal comfort, which is such a huge contrast to his fury over the salvation of an entire city. And this is the setup for the real lesson.
But as you might have guessed, this story isn't really about finding a nice, shady spot to relax. In fact, just as quickly as that comfort was given, it's about to be yanked away. You can see God's object lesson just unfold with this deliberate, perfect timing. At dawn, a worm attacks the plant. By sunrise, it's already withered. And then, to make things worse, a scorching wind kicks in, making Jonah's situation even more miserable than it was before. His source of gladness? It's gone.
And Jonah's reaction is just as extreme as before. He is so distraught over a dead plant and his own discomfort that he actually wishes for death. Now, this is the second time he said this, once because a city was saved and now because a plant has died. His sense of perspective is, well, it's completely out of whack.
And this is the moment. This is exactly what God was building up to. With Jonah at his absolute lowest point, grieving over a plant, God finally poses the question that reveals the true value of a soul.
The key word God uses here is pity. And it's so important we get this right. We're not talking about looking down on someone. This is a deep, real, compassionate concern. It's the kind of care a creator has for their creation, especially when that creation is lost and vulnerable. Then, God puts a number on his concern, a huge number, more than 120,000 people in that city. And he adds this incredible detail. They cannot discern between their right hand and their left. Now, that's not an insult. It's a description of their spiritual ignorance. They're just lost, and God has pity on them.
And this brings us right to the heart of the entire story. God lays out this stark, side-by-side comparison for Jonah. He basically says, look, you felt such deep pity for a plant, a temporary thing that you didn't make, you didn't work for, that came up in a night and was gone the next day. You were heartbroken over your lost shade.
And then comes the final, just devastating question. If you can feel that strongly about a plant, shouldn't I, their creator, feel an infinitely greater pity for that great city filled with 120,000 people made in my own image? The book of Jonah literally ends right there. It just leaves that question hanging in the air for him and, let's be honest, for us to answer. So what's the big takeaway here? I mean, this story is a huge challenge to our own sense of justice, isn't it? It reminds us that God's mercy doesn't really care about our tribal lines or our ideas of who deserves it. It forces us to ask ourselves, have we, like Jonah, made our own comfort into an idol, valuing it more than the well-being and souls of other people? This story suggests that true compassion is way wider and way more radical than we can often imagine.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty challenging question to think about. Who are the people, or maybe the groups of people, that you find it really hard to extend grace to? Who are the ones you'd kind of rather see get what they have coming to them instead of receiving mercy? In other words, who are your Ninevites?